I am president of Chemical.
Me too.
Middle school basketball championships.
Oh, how did you go?
Well, she came in second, but
That's
Woodlawn won the championship.
all right. So we are live on YouTube and y'all are ready to get started.
All right. So I guess we need a recap of what the purpose or what the direction forward is, just so I can make sure I understand and maybe others that don't understand as well.
So I guess I can recap just from the planning board meeting last week. Motion went last week that we would not continue talking about zoning at this meeting, but instead look at the heavy industrial development ordinance, which sits inside the unified development ordinance, and see what we could do with that to accomplish some kind of goals of industrial use being, people being protected from that. Rodney, help me with that. You made the motion. That's what I got out of it.
That's correct. So, I'll say that I was disappointed that we did not continue at least with the discussion of addressing those concerns down there. State before, zoning was the southern part of the county or any part of the county ready for zoning? Probably not. My talking points had really kind of pared down to no zoning plan, but addressing the three concerns. And you all have my talking points, and I've stated myself multiple times with that. So I was disappointed that we voted not to at least continue that conversation in that direction. That being said, obviously the class threes in the heavy industrial development ordinance were one of the main sticking points currently. And at this point, the motion stated that we are not going to address anything within specific the snow cone. That's what I understand you passed, right? So I guess my vision now going forward, that if we're going to address that class three countywide, is that addressing now 160,000 people versus 6,000 people. So, small area. That's what you're dealing with right now, right? You're addressing pretty near what? Is that 8 times? 8 times.
That's 27 times. 6 times 25 would be 150.
Okay.
So 26 times would be 156.
So it's a whole lot more.
Whole lot more.
A whole lot more.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I still believe that when the small area plan was still presented by David Owens, probably 3 years ago now.
I want to say it was 19, it was before Corona, yeah.
That's right. That the reason I felt that that was kind of conducive, maybe this is an okay thing. Address certain areas in the county, because there may be people that have ideas in one part of the county that they won't sit well within in the other part of the county. So I guess my question earlier to Tanya was, can we, if we're going to move forward with just addressing the HIDO ordinance in the UDO, that section of the UDO, can we have subchapters within that would address certain areas? We've got 4 divided areas based on our land development plan.
We have more than 4. Are you talking about the small area plans, small area sections?
Right. I see 4 highlighted.
Oh, let me pull them. that the one that's online?
Right.
Maybe we start out more, maybe do only have 4.
Obviously, this went through back in 2020, approved unanimously by county commissioners, planning board, and all that sort of stuff, right?
Mhm.
So when we really got into the nuts and bolts of it, we started dropping off with you know, following through what was actually the movement at the time. So I guess my question at this point is, can we have subsections within our 6.5 of the UDO that addresses different design criteria like land spacing and setbacks within certain different areas within the county? Does that make sense?
Yes, so state law is not going to prohibit you from doing that. That's something that's.
No state law that would prohibit us.
And it's pretty flexible within reason. There's no allowance for allowing things to be zoned out and completely prohibited.
So, all right, so back when there was a lot of public comment, and in fact, even the county had a survey that was presented at the Sylvan School open house, whatever you want to call that. One to two of them.
It was January when we went to Sylvan.
Okay. So that had a question about eliminating class 3s. All right. And there was a lot of response to eliminating class 3s within a small area of land, Snowden. A lot of response, right? And I think that's why we kind of always honed in on that as probably our saving ground between the no zoning crowd and the zoning crowd, right? That was always our, at least we had common ground on something. So are you saying that that would not be allowed by law in that small area plan? Or only it was allowed because of zoning?
Well, so I think you've asked me multiple questions.
I'm throwing a lot at
You can write the HIDO with restrictions. Restrictions are the only thing the HIDO can give you. You do not have the ability to write asking or saying that you get to make a decision whether it's there or not. You're still only based on technical opportunities there, technical ramifications, and just a long list of the technical things they would need. Legal and state, everybody has weighed in on that last week. You don't have the ability to give permissions to boards to make decisions of yes or no through just the ordinance. It has to go to them. Now, you can write those to be different, those technical requirements to be different in whatever sections of the county. If you want to use the small area plan map from the land development plan, that's an opportunity. That's not for sure. You can use it a lot of different ways. But so did I answer all of your questions?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I guess just throwing that out there as talking points again for the rest of the fellows and getting their feedback, how they. Please speak frankly.
Okay, so let's take a step back and ask the question this way. In Snow County, is the problem the rock quarry, or is the problem the rock quarry and everybody was surprised when it got there? Nobody knew it was coming.
That was the biggest thing, rock quarry, because back in the old HIDO, 2011 HIDO, yeah, there was no public notification, all these things we talked about, that we rectified, right? And that was a great thing. Notification, that process, going through that process. Now, obviously, I think Ms. Connie knows that there's a lot of problems now that the rock quarry is potentially going in. I mean, operating or not operating, whatever they're doing, to the surrounding neighbors. Yeah. Where Eric does, he doesn't know what's going on over there, he doesn't hear anything, so.
Ground don't shake at his house when it's.
Ground don't shake at his house, rock
Hear the
crushers not
pressure.
going, 300 trucks a day aren't going into work. That won't pass my house either. They're gonna pass somebody's house.
I had an uncle lives on Crestfield Road. He said he ain't know nothing about no rock quarry, ain't heard no rock quarry, ain't shook his house. Nothing. That's right off farm.
So with that being said, yes, now there are issues currently with the rock quarry. There's issues that when it's first applied for, came to light, all that sort of stuff. So that saga is, well documented. Now, what's next? What's next? Potentially additional industries coming in. We're gonna have plenty of notification on that. There's gonna be plenty of additional development in the future based on what potentially could come our way also.
If it comes through the county office and does it correctly. Now, it's not likely that somebody's just gonna go out there in the backyard and say, leave up the rock quarry.
Right.
And not even get a permit. That would be a huge, well, do we have enough infrastructure around here to support a paper mill?
No, we do not. Paper mills, cement manufacturing, not a batch, but manufacturing. I mean, that's some of the stuff that's in the class threes. It's never gonna come here anyhow. We don't have the forest to support a paper mill, we do not have the raw materials to support cement manufacturing.
But it's right to put it in there. It was right for us to look into coal ash disposal. Sadly, we had an incident last week and you got away before the county attorney. I don't know if you picked up on it with the YouTube or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I was at the meeting.
I thought you left before it was all over with.
I saw it on YouTube. Yeah.
So you did too.
But it also was at the earlier meeting and heard Patrick talk about it.
Right. Well, I asked him specifically to formally address what the state had done. If you heard on YouTube, you know about that. And I'm in agreement here in this meeting, this fall, that we need to look at that kind of stuff. Now, I think it's ridiculous to sit here and talk about a nuclear reactor. Primarily because we don't have a water source around here to cycle and keep it cool. But, we also understand that right person wants something bad enough and willing to take the time and spend the money to get it, it can be made available. So that's where we are and why we're here, in my thinking.
Yeah, I don't think anybody in the southern part of the county wants a racetrack either necessarily, unless it has plenty of space.
Well, one of my perspectives on this is because I've had a time to kind of marinate or soak in this mess. And when this mega site over Randolph County, when it's exploded, of course, you and I have talked about this, so this is not going to be new information for you. But if we put this, we'll call it a protected bubble. We'll use that. I'm not going to call it ordinance. I'm not going to call it zoning. I'm just going to call it bubble of protection around Snow County. All of that stuff, whatever it is, houses, ancillary businesses, you name it, it's just going to leapfrog over Snow County like Whitney. Well, guess what? Now it's personal. Because that's where I live. Sandy's not here, so she can't weigh in with me. But it's okay. So now y'all are over there protected, and we deal with it. Well, that was the other reason for me saying, you know what, let's keep this conversation going, but let's take Snow Camp out of it. Let's make it countywide. I don't think that any of us want to be infringed on unawares. So that's where we are. It's don't hear this as being us and y'all.
Right.
Because we're not adversarial, we're neighbors, we're friends, we're gonna continue to be. And we want to do what we can. Mr. Bear lives in the other end of the county.
Right.
But in all fairness, you probably don't want a rock quarry in your backyard.
No, I don't mind racetrack, but I want the rock quarry.
That's usually, we don't have our hills to die on, so.
Was the racetrack there when you came along?
Yes, sir.
So you had an option.
Oh, yeah.
If it was that big a problem, you could have
Went somewhere
settled
else.
somewhere else.
That's went somewhere else.
What was the question a few years back? Do you really think living on Racetrack Road and having a problem with the lights on Friday?
She still lives on Racetrack Road.
Well, evidently, there's at least two, because ours was a. But anyhow,
So going, I mean, so at this point, I'm trying to address anything else with the class threes. I think our operation setback is more than sufficient. Asking anything more. That was when we were coming through the small, the subcommittee there with Ray and Lee, and yeah, I think 500 foot class three was probably, that was it, that's fine.
So
Setbacks.
Bill, completely define setback, where you measure from, what that means.
Okay, so setbacks is from the area of operation to the property line of the piece of property. So for example, just to, this was the property line. That means in a straight line, they could use, they had to set back their operation use 500 feet.
But inside their own property line, they have to come in 500 feet before they could do any of their operations.
Really
And we
felt
define
for
operations.
class three, that was probably about as max as we could, you know, put on people to have that 500 foot buffer around their property for that area of operation. Anything more than that, there was nothing ever. Right? So we weren't trying to lock out business when we did this. Now, the placement of these businesses is the land space. That's why I suggest 2,000, but we did 1,200. We worked together as a team, the three of us, you know, submitted and all that. That is from that property line out. If there was a church, school, house, then
Hospital, nursing home, assisted living care, childcare.
it's listed in there.
Yeah.
And even we added historical property.
Yeah, that's page 57, y'all.
Right. We added historical property.
but land spacing is actually somebody else's property.
That's correct. It's somebody else's property, but what the land spacing means that if that house was 1,000 foot or 800 foot, then that entity couldn't go there. It couldn't go there.
So, okay, so let's make this personal.
Yeah.
You want to put a rock quarry in. You got the right amount of property to do it. You've got your setback and everything. And my house is 1,500 feet from the property line. You put your rock quarry in. My daughter gets married and she wants to build a house. And I want to put it over here. Now, can I put her house on my property where I want it?
Yeah, I think that is
It's at
correct.
the time of the establishment of application, they have to stay away from. But if you as a property owner decide to put a house or a daycare or whatever within that layer, that's your decision. You're still using your property. It's not meant to hurt joining property owner from using their land. That's being
Time of
redefined.
permitting this entity, if there was a house at 1,000 foot, then they couldn't go there. We took out the waiver too, that homeowner couldn't. even
The
waive.
homeowner waiver is gone. Now you only get waivers through the board by variance.
So that was a placement tool. Where this could go.
Help me understand how it is that you need 1,200 feet to put your business in. But I could come in there and develop right up to the line if I choose to, and it don't make a difference. Help me understand that, because
Well, that, again, and that is, it kind of went and coincided with the notification and what was there first.
So yeah, the property owner, after the fact, they know what they're getting to, they're knowingly putting something back close, whereas before,
Racetrack.
I'm gonna say you like a racetrack.
yeah.
And the racetrack's there,
Mhm.
and you decide to go build your house at the racetrack.
Well, in all fairness, where the racetrack's concerned, the people that have bought houses in proximity to that racetrack are not building on family land.
Right.
Those people have taken it upon themselves to come here from afar. And I ain't talking about a hot thing, to make stuff go away. I'm talking about a great distance. And now they've come in here and decided that the racetrack was offensive, even though, and I'm understanding, because I was the one sitting in the hot seat when all that was going on, but it's a struggle for me to say, and we've talked about this on multiple levels. It's always been a problem with this land spacing. When somebody else's property is being used for your business. Now, you got your 500 feet, I get that, but this other 1,200 is somebody else's. And if you need 1,200 feet, then I think that 1,200 feet needs to be where you pay the tax, not where somebody else pays tax. Now, that's just me. I'm not saying we need to change our way of thinking, but I want everybody to, crazy as I am, that's how my mind thinks.
So it isn't prohibiting the property owner from using their property, it's just making the operations of that adjoining business be that far away from actual structures that people have.
Say, rock.
So you don't even have to call it land
They got
spacing.
1,200 feet.
You can just be,
Then you
these units have
decide,
to be so
I
far
want
away.
to go for
We
rock.
can change the wording, but it still makes sense.
Decided to do it once.
I get all that, but what I'm saying is, we have come up with this number, we started at 2,000 feet.
With,
Well, the old ordinance was 2,000 feet from the center of operation, which that was very arbitrary. What was the center of
fine,
operation?
and tell me, I mean, the properties that are owned by the rock quarry may be oddest shape altogether. Tell me where the center is. We use computers to figure it out and that's still not exact. So that's why that was changed.
Was that change? We came up with a figure that we could use from the property line that would help with placing facilities. That was the bottom line.
There's a reason why 1,200 feet was used. House, school, daycare, church, you name it.
And now that, when I say token, if a guy buys that property and puts a subdivision in, he can, that 1,200 feet's not gonna affect, right?
Bill, right up to 10
He can
feet.
go right up to whatever the setback is for the
Yeah, you
subdivision,
make me nervous. when you put it
Yeah.
in.
50 feet or whatever that is, subdivision. ordinance. But he also understands that he's bought this, he's developed it as a subdivision, and he's right next to a rock quarry, and how marketable, how's it gonna affect his sale?
Mhm.
That's right, so he's taking that risk.
Okay.
So let me throw another scenario. If I'm the owner of class 3, I built according to the specs, but I didn't have enough money to make it as wide as I wanted. So I made it a skinny thing. If I wanted to expand the width, I printed on the 1,200 feet. Is that possible?
The width of the actual operations. Okay, so y'all, well, prior to you, we had, Mr. Phillips, he's in there 3 landfills. He did exactly that. He started out with the chunk. He needed to expand, so he'd come in here and ask for, new application to say this other part I want to include, and he goes through that same process.
Because if the homeowner, in that case, built the house up on their property line to expand, wouldn't that be now in violation?
Yeah, if that
So there-
homeowner built a house after the first part went in, now they want to do a second part, and they can't meet that land spacing.
Right, so we just, kind of on the other side, put an additional restriction or prevented that business from growing.
In that
In that
direction.
direction.
Yeah.
Except that it is black and white that they can't ask for waivers.
Waivers.
If it's an undue hardship, state law covers those forms.
Okay, so what about this? He starts his business off and it's a rock quarry or it's a whatever. And he knows on day one that he doesn't have enough capital to do what he wants to do.
Right.
So he starts off with what he can manage and afford. And he's 1,500 feet from his property line. Now, from the property line, we got this 1,200 feet in here. Can he still go ahead and build up to the 500 feet? Or if something comes in here, can he build to a point where 1,700 feet between him and the new structure?
And if he,
You understand my question?
yeah, so what he put in the first time he got approved, if he wants to get bigger, he's gonna come back again.
We
The
understand
best way
it.
to go is to draw it from the beginning as big as you want it to be and then build it as you can.
Right.
So go ahead and get permission for it and then just do what you can afford.
That's right.
And then you're all set. to
Not
go.
that says you have to build it out all at one time.
That's true.
Okay,
Yeah. the-
We've got plenty.
well,
of
that's a very
instances.
well made question and that's the,
You don't have to use everything, right? So if you have your business, say it's an asphalt plant, okay? And he has this operation right in there, that's all he needs. Yeah, he can expand within that envelope, it's not a problem.
At forethought to draw it out first, or
Right, the 500-foot setback is based on the piece of property that he bought.
I guess mine was more so on the 1,200 feet from the other.
well, and I think it's right. So here's the house, here's the property line. There's 1,200 feet. But he's got 1,500 feet in here that he's had permitted. So from the time he got started to work until now, there's been a house built in here. Daughter got married, need a house. So can he take 1,200 feet plus 500 and measure 1,700 feet and come up to that point? Or can he still come right up to the original 500 feet, even though this house had come in there since he started?
If the house came in there afterwards and it prohibits him from meeting 1,200, then he's gonna have to ask for a waiver.
Now, he was permitted to right here to start with.
Right. He could have went
500 feet.
Because the land spacing still comes from that exterior property line, so that didn't change. It's what happened on the other side of the property line that changed.
Okay,
You can't go measure inside to count for what's supposed to be outside.
okay, all right.
Yes, he could.
Unless you write it that way. I mean, y'all can write it that way.
Well, no, he could, I would say, that's how it was in the Philippines, okay? Because he didn't use everything that was really the property or at that point. I mean, he could expand it because he had that property on it.
You're talking about the first time.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right, so he only used a section, we did Philippines, he only used about half of that property. And then when he came back to permit for the second time, he still was well within his setbacks.
Yeah, I think his
From the
first
old
permit
one.
was the front 10 acres and the back 10. He's about 20-acre piece, and he came back for the rest of it.
And I would
And
say
the
that-
ordinance had
that-
changed in
that-
between. so-
That scenario that if this was a rock quarry, it was placed 1,200 feet, 500-foot setback, if they only started with this, then they could expand out to that 500 foot.
With the new
support that.
application, yeah, because the site plan has to meet our requirements to go through that process.
What's the process for a waiver?
So it's by state law, they have to apply to us and explain a hardship, undue hardship on the land. And then it comes before y'all and it goes to commissioners to make final. The guy that did the garage?
Yeah.
That's the process.
Okay, so the only time it would be an issue is if I had this grandiose plan of building an asphalt plant. And everybody started building concrete roads. Sold them, and then if you bought it, you didn't want an asphalt plant, you wanted to change to another class 3 industry. Then it would be an issue if that person next door built further into their property because you wouldn't be able to get the 1,200 square feet number. So that's the only time it would really hurt the business owner. Per se.
That's true. As it's true.
That's-
Set it first back, we'll set it back.
Right. the second person buying it, hope they do the homework.
Yeah.
So that due diligence comes.
If not, they'll leave that building up or whatever they're doing, and go that way. But okay, I'm just curious. So I guess back to the original question, what more can we do to restrict the class 3 since we know we can't eliminate them all together?
Yeah, that's off the table legally.
Because I'm looking at it's pretty restrictive, and the only thing that's missing is somebody can think of another class 3 that's not listed here that add to it. I can't think.
Like I said, so my original talking points that we, passed out several weeks ago was increasing that land spacing would be probably about the only thing that we could really do unless you require different landscaping. Everything, more trees, more.
So what part of it gives the most heartburn, I guess, that you would want to change to have a bigger impact, I guess? What are we trying to fix and all?
Right. Outside of what that survey, part of the zoning plan, most people would want down in the southern part of the county, but that's not gonna be true in all parts of the county. That's where.
Part of that survey was done during the land development plan as well, not just the small area plan. So we got about the same results, just different ratios.
So if you can't eliminate them, then maybe make them harder to place. That would be about the only thing to do. That's why I had suggested maybe up to a 2,000 or more, whatever people want.
So the original 2,000 linear feet ordinance from 2011, that ordinance had that waiver by the property owner, the adjoining property owner could sign a waiver and be okay with being inside that 2,000 feet. And that's what happened with the quarry. We had, I don't know, a handful of property owners that signed that waiver. That's what allowed the quarry to come in because they couldn't meet that land spacing requirement. That in the rewrites was taken out. And instead of letting landowners make that decision, it's now been put on board for any waivers that will come to a public meeting, to a commissioner, to y'all first. So now you're at a 2,000 linear foot with no special permissions. You're doing straight by state law. You have to be very careful that if you put whatever spacing you put on it, that you actually still have space in the county to put one.
Oh, okay, I get it now.
If you land space it, and there actually is nowhere to put it, then what, that puts us in a bad legal state.
So with 2,000, was there one place?
So we began looking at that and it's not looking like that's a possibility. There's a lot of different ways of looking at it. What size land you pick to even go with, we got 40-acre minimums on these class 3s. And I think that's the one y'all most worried about is or talking about.
That's right. I don't think we're talking about anything in the class 2s or the class 1s. It's never really a large talking point there. And again, the tiered structure of bigger, badder, better,
So land spacing may not be something we can do a whole lot with in this ordinance because we've probably done as much as we can. And it's state legal.
That's basically what we were gonna try to do, we'll talk about doing, making the land space bigger.
I think that was on Bill's talking points. So
You're saying that can't be done?
I'm saying legally, if you space them and there's nowhere in the county to put them, you've shown them out, and that is.
yeah, spacing's got to be able to support at least one within our county, right? If 2,000 won't do it, well, 1,500.
You're saying there's not a tract of land in the county that.
Well, that's what.
That's what we're exploring, what that would look like if you actually took your 40 or 50 acres. And class 3 actually needs more than that, but is there a parcel in the county that's big enough? Well, the quarry didn't have a parcel big enough, they bought multiple parcels, right? So we start with something that's kind of 40, 50 acres across the county, and you put buffers on every parcel that's over that or equal to bigger than the 50 acres, and you put the 2,000 foot land spacing on it, what's it look like? Put 1,200, put whatever number you want, and we can do max with that. And we're not completely finished with that, but that looks like that may not be something that we can still be legal with. I don't know that there's a hole that you might put one in if you did that. So that's what legal has told us we should look at, so that's what we're looking
Which tracks of land did you get 2,000, did you get?
at. Without touching, your list on 57 is what we're looking at, without touching educational facility, childcare, assisted living, nursing home, hospital, medical center, church, dwelling unit, or historic property. That's what you're trying not to do, to get in that 2,000.
2,000 foot from anything on here.
Right.
And they still got to have how many acres land?
40 certainly.
There's
Yeah.
there's some tracks around that they do.
All of what you're looking at here is up for grabs.
All of them. Okay.
Any of these numbers are up for grabs. Y'all are looking at this, none of these are in stone. They can be reworked. That's what y'all are here to see, what you want to rework.
There's, the more I think about it, there's some tracks where they sold their development rights that I know of that would be big enough.
Well,
They
right
sold
there
their-
brings up a real good point, because there's been some thought given to this agricultural preservation. And I think it's a great idea. And it's good, but it's not set in stone. Stop me when I start telling why.
Okay.
Again, if the right person wants it bad enough, they can have a lawyer undo that, pay the back taxes, pay the fines and penalties. And with enough money, then that entire parcel can become available.
It's true.
Your example, a couple of meetings back or some, was a fair amount of property. And maybe looking into that based on what may be coming with the next generation or not.
Right.
Compared to Dr. Sidner and what all. But, you know, 500 acres of land in one spread, that's a fair chunk anymore.
I mean,
We don't talk about land in thousands of acres in Alamance County like we once did.
Right.
There are some folks that own 1,000 acres of land in Alamance County. But it ain't the old family farm.
No,
It's some here and some
another
there,
area,
spread around.
there, set out here.
That's right. And that's great that they got it. But, you know, if you take 500 acres or 490, whatever the number is, and somebody comes in here and says, okay, well, this is what I'm looking for. Well, you can't use that, it's in the road. Well, you can't use it, but, okay, well, good, that's where you want to sell it. You let me get the deed in my name, and you let me take care of it. Because I got a lawyer, and my pocket's is deep enough, I can undo all that, I can pay the back taxes, I can. And then when you get that property, right, then you got somebody over here that you've done been working for. And now, all this work that we're doing now to prevent.
We're not preventing anything. We're just
Correct.
trying to make it harder.
And that is the reason why I personally am not ready to stand up and raise my hand and vote for zoning. Because even with it, if the right person comes in, it's just another speed bump in the road.
Yeah.
It's not gonna stop it. It may slow it down some. It may make it more inconvenient. It may make the cost of our fuel tax go up because it costs more to pave the roads, but it's not gonna stop it. And when I weigh in my mind, we can do this and punish everybody on a level and still not stop this. Or we cannot punish everybody on this level and still not stop this. That's why I'm past. Or we gonna have this noxious industry. All I'm looking at is what is the outfall gonna be on everybody? Because at this point, we ain't figuring gravy splashing off the taters onto something else. It's more like clapping to me.
So yeah, the zoning gives you that decision-making process, but the decision makers have to make that decision.
At this point, the zoning talk is on. So we have, now how was, okay, on the motion, the motion was we recommend not pursuing zoning at this point, right? Now, so that's the motion, and say we came up here and we said, okay, well, we're gonna address the class threes. Well, 2000 ain't gonna work. We're gonna have probably, say 1500. So we change this 1500. All right, we have a hearing, right, and everybody says, oh yeah, 1500, okay. Right, now we send it to the county commissioners as a recommendation, right? They can either vote yay or nay themselves, whether it was zoning, whether it was upgrading the class 3 or whatever. So I guess we'll.
And they could change it back to 1200.
Right.
They could move it to 2000. They could split the difference, call it 1750.
Right.
They could take no action on it. Them five sitting up there make the decisions in Alamance County.
Right.
And us five sitting here are gonna make a recommendation to the 12 or 13. That's gonna make a recommendation to the 5, and that's the pecking order.
So the motion that you made the other day, it was recommending not pursuing any more zoning and just do this. If we do this, we present this, and they say, well, just wait a second. We like zoning, we wanted zoning, and kick it back to us, right? That's the possibility of that also.
That possibility does exist, and it also is the possibility that they could come here and say, well, we want zoning. Y'all ain't got it, so we're just gonna go ahead and do it.
And they just write it themselves.
And just do it themselves. Look at Tanya and say, write us a 2-page zoning ordinance, and we're gonna vote on it the next meeting. That could happen. Not likely, but it could, but the buck stops with the commissioners.
So what can we change to guide it?
Outside of land spacing, I don't know what
Yeah, it
else.
depends on what you're trying to address. Lots of changes can happen, but what we're trying to accomplish with the change.
I think Eric said, make it a little bit more difficult. He's used the word harder, but make it a little bit more difficult to place a high impact industry within an area or all areas or the whole county or whatever. I think that's what you're saying.
That's right.
Well, and let's put that in perspective. Orange has made it more difficult. It's harder to do stuff in Orange County than it is in Alamance County. That's why folks want to come here. Guilford County, same thing. Chatham, they're getting ahead of us. But they didn't get ahead of Orange, and that's the reason why they're where they are now. So do we make it more difficult to do stuff here? Financially in particular, so that we don't have an influx of noxious industry? Or do we let folks come here with their business, pay their tax in Alamance County?
And we're only talking about one facet of the industry.
Correct.
Obviously, we're not addressing anything commercial or any subdivisions or anything like that. So there's commercial industries that are not high impact. This is not addressing it. If Walmart wants to put a
distribution center down there on the corner of
If
49
that's-
and
yeah, if that's
Greensburg, Chapel Hill
something that's-
Road. There is nothing in here that's gonna prevent them.
And if there's
or none of it
something
Make it harder.
y'all want to address in this by including that, when you said something about manufacturing, you can recreate your classes or add something else in there if that's what you're interested, if that's what more you want to include. Kind of have to know what parts
How do you feel about
are
that?
important.
Adding to the classes. What do you take out? What manufacturing do you take out? You take out glass manufacturing, like Corning plant that I'm working at, or my next job is proto labs, mold injection. I mean, we don't
I
want
don't
that.
think we can discriminate.
Right,
There's, by law, we've got the artesian manufacturing and then you have just manufacturing. You start getting too picky, you start discriminating, and then we have the problem.
The one that gives me heartburn is the chemical manufacturing, because when you think about fire service for me, and what is your radius in which evacuation need take place if there's an accident?
You mean like fertilizer plant fire?
well, chemical manufacturing is class 2.
Correct. That's the one that gives me a little heartburn, only because there's a lot more, in my opinion, impact. Chemical manufacturing facility, wherever it's at, than almost any of them ones that are on here for class 3. When we look at life. But that's just my thoughts. And being on another committee, the emergency planning committee, I hear that all the time about chemical placement, what's in these facilities and what the radius is for evacuation. And we got a plant that specializes in creating the chemical. Doesn't say what kind of chemical, it just says chemical. So I mean, that could be anything from methyl bad stuff. So that's just something that gives me heartburn, but, you know, I would want to do thorough research before we even make that type of decision, because I don't believe it's a knee-jerk reaction, because it's something that I've been exposed to or familiar with. See what we got here.
I think when we come up with these classes and we use the fact that see it, taste it, smell, right? So obviously, a chemical manufacturer may not have any one of those situations. Most of it's going to be contained within the building, right? Or you're going to hear some, see the blasting, the rock crusher stuff, asphalt plant, you're going to smell that. Yeah, that those sort of things. Paper mill for sure. You're going to those kind of things. So that's how we came about these. What was the most intrusive? See it, taste it, smell it. The other stuff we kind of just okay. Chemical manufacturing came into it too. That I think there was a business down off of what is it? What's that? Millboy Road or across from Alamance School. It goes where the newest solar farm is.
Come on, so get right.
We'll come up 87.
Oh,
Southern-
Southern,
Yeah.
Southern,
Boywood,
Mhm.
Boywood.
Boywood, Road,
All right.
Storage closed.
Ray was telling us about a business and that was manufacturing a chemical. And they were a small business and we really didn't have any heartburn when we were discussing that.
So you're telling me y'all might want to expand past that. This is called heavy industry, but it can be manufacturing in heavy industry. You don't have to stick with see it, taste it, smell it if you want to. That's what y'all are here for, to see if that's what you want to do.
Because I mean, even 100 feet from the stream, that's not far enough. There's a chemical leak.
So the stream buffer is a state law number is where that came from.
Right, but I mean, depending on the industry, wouldn't you want to be further than that?
Possibly, that would be up to y'all, and I have to address that with the state when we start doing more restraints on environmental stuff.
And, you know, I guess size of the facility obviously will be probably the most critical factor. How much chemicals are they producing and they have on site? Which that will be, you know, probably a tier 3 label wise, but that one gives me heartburn because of the risk. It may be contained, which is a great thing, but if it ever get uncontained, we got a problem out there. So, and we got some industries now, just local businesses that are in some of the municipalities that should create concern because of the proximity to people. There's nothing to do about now, they're here. But I'm thinking about for the county, there's more space, you can make it bigger. Probably something to consider down the future just because of the risk that's associated with it.
If you don't mind me asking, what business are you talking about?
Here, I mean, something as simple as, you'd be surprised how many, what chemicals are stored in the candy factory right there at the orange,
Organic or something like that, organic candy, is that what it's called?
yeah, something like that. So every company has to report what chemicals they have on site, you know, whether it's dangerous or whatever. And then they report it to the state. And then we have a great committee that I sit on, in which is comprised of all of your first responders and other agencies. And there's reporting that has to go on, and we try to encourage business to do it. So if something was to happen, the first responders will know what they're going into. And what we discovered is there's a lot of, I'm not speaking for the committee, let me make that clear now. But what we discovered over the years, as people started reporting, there's some regular manufacturing companies that store a lot of chemicals that can really put lots of residents in jeopardy or in danger if there was an accident, a fire, or a spill for that matter. It has to be taken into account because of that risk that's there. You know, unfortunately, there's some residents that are so close that it's too late. If it happens, if there's an accident, sorry, you're already kind of part of it. Nothing we can do about it, even if we were right there. So I'm just thinking about, since we're talking about in the county, more space, larger facilities in theory, and we're going to allow a chemical plant to come in and only have to adhere to these restrictions, this is probably going to be the prime place they want to come. Granted, you know, we got other stuff. I'm not saying snow camp, I'm just talking about in the county period.
And that's the reason why I wanted to get away from snow camp.
Yeah, I agree.
And in other words, if we're gonna offer up this protection on whatever level,
It needs to be countywide.
it does.
And I know we're not in the meeting now, but that was my thoughts. I feel like that if we're not looking at a comprehensive strategy of something countywide, I don't know if it's going to be beneficial right now. But I do hear what some of the residents reached out to me about. Well, we do want snow camp protected, but the overwhelming, in my opinion, if I had to count numbers, granted, I didn't hear from all 6,000 residents, but the good chunk I heard from said no. And so I work for them at the end of the day. So, well, it's not, I don't get paid like you said, but.
Well,
But that was my
let me share it with you. Bill and I, of course, now fairly, we've been friends for a long time. And when this rock quarry came up, I stood in his yard. I'm talking about you like you're somewhere else. But I stood in Bill's yard and I said, you need to get on this plane. And he had some hesitation about it. And when he put his application in, some other people had some hesitation about it. But all things considered, it's been a good fit, wouldn't you say?
So. When it came up for renewal, I had reservations, I talked to Lee and several other guys about it, but you know, I guess as long as I had something to offer, I felt like it was a good fit. I didn't have anything to offer, or if we weren't going to be able to do anything, or, you know, be a benefit.
If I was gonna be above, then I wasn't gonna do it.
Well, I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
That ain't exactly the row of corn I was gonna plow, but you're in the patch.
Okay.
The other night, when I made that motion, he voted against it. And we talked about that. And I told him, I said, you, Bill, are representing a group of people in Snow Camp. And it was right for you to vote against that motion. Because the people that you're representing want zoning, they asked for it. Most of them have read the words on the paper and they ain't as excited about it as they once were. But you and Eric, you on a level, and myself and everybody else on the planning board has heard overwhelmingly from people in all corners of the county who do not want zoning. And that's the reason why the motion was made and voted on the way it was. You and I talked about that. So we were not elected. We don't get paid, but we do work for our community. And Bill and I, unless he says different now, we're as good of friends tonight as we've ever been and gonna continue to be. And matter of fact, I'd have been disappointed if you hadn't voted against that motion. Because at that point, you would not have been doing your job, even though it was volunteer. So that's my take on it.
So that's in the past. That was an episode last week. So here we are this week, okay? All right, so we're tasked now with addressing class 3 industries, the HIDO industry. This 6.5 of our UDO move forward for the whole county. So do we feel that if we want Tanya to do more research on what would be an expansive land spacing without crossing the threshold of being against the law?
We're almost there. She said 2,000 would be more or less illegal.
At least 800 feet.
Yeah, yes.
Now, we might be splitting hairs, right? But, yeah, I can do that now.
But 800 feet is a big number, so. Is that what y'all want to do then?
What can we do?
Well, it's gonna be tough to do, if we find somewhere in the 800 foot, okay. Is that gonna satisfy the need? Is there a want here that actually is a decision making, not a technical review? That's what this group has to figure out.
I think we had come to the agreement that the class 3s, we were just dealing with the snow camp area, was the compromise.
Between the two groups.
Between the two groups.
That's right.
But I'm also hearing some concern over class 2s.
Well, and,
He's got to get, I mean, he's got a whole, I
don't
He's got an
disagree.
I don't disagree
individual,
with
we
him,
don't
but I
have.
don't know enough about it to say one way or the other. I just, he's got more experience in that than I do.
Yep.
That's
That's
what makes
why
it a diverse
everybody's
board.
got-
That's why it's a good thing.
Right.
But, I mean, I don't have enough experience to say, yeah, you're nay to that, because to be honest with you, I don't know.
So that might be something we can revisit.
Here's something that I struggle with for years. I've said this, I think everybody here's heard me say it, maybe not in this forum, but my mind still won't understand how a business in Alamance County is noxious, it's a bad neighbor, it will kill you. But once you move inside the city limits of Graham, Burlington, wherever, it becomes a good neighbor. And y'all, every one of you know what I'm talking about.
exactly.
The rock quarry was on Hutton Mill Road first. Then come the asphalt plant. Then come the concrete mixing facility. Then come the apartments and the elementary school and a hospital. It just, every time I go here, I get that saran wrap and do like this. So when it explodes, all the parts are there. It's easy to put back together. But out in the county, it'll kill you. In the city limits, good neighbor. I can't get that to reconcile. Like a checkbook, there's a dime in there somewhere, I just lose it every month.
I think
and this is just off the cuff, I think the biggest difference in the municipalities is they know where they can put it in. So they're gonna make an educated decision on if they're gonna move there, stay there, or whatnot, because there's an actual plan on where it's approved and not. Versus in the county, there is no plan.
So, right, Medlin's got an industrial park. Your chamber has some ideas and lands that they recommend for industrial use, a city and county. A lot of it has to do with infrastructure.
Mhm.
That's your water and sewer things that they have available to them. But yes, there are some other planning mechanisms that the municipalities are using, the counties not. But we did hear at multiple meetings recently that there's a decision making that people want, they want to give the power to say no,
So I-
And
even if they
that,
meet the technical, piece,
yeah, and that is not legal. Is that correct?
not through the highway.
Is it legal through zoning?
They have the ability to say no.
Not
It
in
doesn't
UDO.
fit. If you start out like when we're that basic ordinance that I gave y'all last week, there's only two districts, right? So the agriculture district has everything, and then that industrial district has a little bit of manufacturing and has all of this HIDO stuff. And if you're in ag and you want to do those other things, they have to ask to rezone. It comes to you all first. And you all say, yes, it fits or doesn't. No, it doesn't. That's a legislative decision, so you're very discretionary of, there's too many neighbors around here, there's too many dislike pieces that doesn't fit the area. You ought to make a recommendation of the no. You take it to the commissioners can look at it the same way as you and say, it really just doesn't fit. We're just not going to recommend this, and it doesn't change, and you can't use it for that. That's how that process is set up by state law.
And then they go to court.
If they, well, see, the court piece is if the boards made a decision that was not supported by state law, not that they liked or disliked the decision, but if something that was said in that process that didn't meet the state law, they can go to court. Now, the court can overturn it. It can agree with the boards, or it can say you missed a piece. We didn't like your advertisement. We didn't like the way this was worded or what one person said at the vote. They go back to the boards and rehear. They have a couple opportunities. So yeah, if you have the ability to say no by not allowing that rezoning happen. Then you have special use permits with some of these higher classes or special use, that's quasi judicial. It's like the guy with the garage variance. They've got to prove certain things by state law or the board's hands are tied. They can't allow it to go through. So that gives you even more strength in the decision-making process.
What if they said yes that day? How would that be handled?
So if somebody says yes to a decision, but like you've got a 30-day appeal process, the person applying, anybody for or against, indifferent, whatever, they can appeal to court and say they don't believe item B by state law was met. They don't believe the board looked at that and they approved it in the right way because we don't think item B was met. And the court can hear that.
But that would be the county going to court. to reverse that decision.
Well, a group outside of
Oh, outside.
citizens of the county can make that appeal to court based on they don't believe the county made the right decision and give a reason why, not just arbitrarily. You've got to say which item they didn't meet by state law when they made that decision.
So in theory, it could stand if nobody challenged, it, even though it didn't meet state law.
Yeah, it's not wrong until it's challenged. Our ordinances aren't wrong
That's a
until
lot
they're
of
challenged.
pages by, I'm just thinking about that's some,
I've been through those. When
Those
I was in
five.
Raccoon County, there was a landfill that tried to come. County already had a landfill. It was right before I got there, when we went through 2 years. We think it's unconstitutional what the county did. We don't think our meetings followed, blah, blah, blah. And the county prevailed because they did it the right way, but it was questioned. They had to prove how they did it, if they did it correctly.
That process only happens through zoning at this point, right? I mean,
Through what?
Through zoning, it doesn't have to be.
Well, sure, it could happen with you, yeah. If we did a misstep when all these, us, y'all, and commissioners look at the technical requirements, and somebody believes these technical requirements weren't met, item 5G, right? They can take it to court and say, well, I think it met, they shouldn't have given me approval. And can fill out waivers. Just really anything planning does, we're only enabled by state law. So we have to stay within that law and people can question it. That's why we always have legal in our back pocket. Planning relies on legal a whole lot.
Can I switch gears just for a second?
Or we got some more about that.
Y'all continue talking about it.
Number two, the groundwater and well study. Why is that optional? Or why is that put on the applicant if it needs to be done? Oh, 62. Said the applicant must certify whether any study or analysis of impact on regulated land use, so forth and so forth, is required or not. So we allowing the applicant to make that decision, but if they're wrong, then there's nothing to combat that. See what I mean? Because let's just say we're gonna build I bought a land and built a class 3. And from the research I did, I don't see where I have to do a water study, groundwater storage study. And I come before, submit my application, the planning board, according to this, is not gonna come back and say, you are required to submit a water storage study. They're gonna take the applicant's word for it, unless I'm reading this wrong.
When you go into some of these class 3s, like a quarry or an asphalt plant, they're gonna have to do that groundwater study anyhow with the state.
Who does the groundwater study? Is that a DWQ thing?
Well, okay, so, yeah, but they don't have a division that do it. They're just a permitting division for it, right? So
They're contractors that do that?
that's exactly, they, applicant would go out and get a engineer, that type of person to do that groundwater study.
But I would understand the question he's asking, right? The way I understand it is the way it's here. The rock work, they would determine whether they need to do the study.
Yeah, back in the old HIDO, that was permitted under 2011, that paragraph was not in there. That was added due to concerns that brought up from the citizens down there.
But the way
So do they-
me, Anthony is reading this, is if I was building the quarry, I'd say, nope, don't think I need to study.
No,
Really?
that's not, that is read that if the state's requiring that study, we are too.
Okay,
Because if state people that actually regulate this stuff aren't requiring it, then we're not requiring it.
Okay, because the way I read
The way I
this,
read
the
it
way
is-
I read this is just saying that it's up
Y'all
to
need
me
to retype.
as the owner of the
That's
site.
what it meant.
Yeah.
That came about very last minute. with the
I don't need that.
And it, I mean, it says if such a study is required, that it gets up here, let's see here.
or maybe it should say if such a study is required by the state.
Instead of applicant.
Because it's saying
So
the
it says-
applicant gotta determine this if it's required, but it doesn't say.
Where it says or wells is required to be undertaken by the applicant pursuant to state or federal regulations. That's what they're trying to capture, that if the state or federal requirements are there, then we have to see it too.
Okay, the sentence before that's what me and him looking at where it says applicant must certify whether or not any study or analysis impacts it will.
All right, so I guess. you're
The
saying that
lawyers
we
wrote
read
this,
all
y'all
the way
understand
down.
that, right?
We do now.
Now, that
That's
can
why-
be tightened up,
That's
the new
why I don't
lawyers,
understand it.
the new lawyers can look at that if y'all want me to.
I mean, it just looks like it was,
It
I
could
could say,
be.
okay, I don't think I need to certify that, so.
We'll get
Or
them looked at.
even they can probably fix it with the last sentence, if such study is required by state and federal regulations, then the applicant must. But I mean, it was just, when I first read it on first glance, I was like, so we're putting the onus on the applicant to tell us if the study should be needed versus us saying you need to produce a water study. But now I get it when you translate it, it makes sense.
That's a clever translation.
Get from legalese to everyday talk.
Right.
Some of the stuff like the groundwater study there and the traffic was not in the 2011. We brought that into to play that it could be part of the package that Tanya could look at.
Talking points for public hearings and stuff like that. Outside of the groundwater right now, if you're gonna start an asphalt plant or something like that, and you go apply through the mining division or whatever of NCDEQ. They come. Now, whether the studies are right or not, and that's another topic of discussion, but we don't have jurisdiction in this particular office.
Our jurisdiction, you are correct.
Did see something that helps cover or some chemical scenario that I was talking about. It does say that it's still contaminated, thing has to be given to,
I think that was in the original one too.
that's good.
We went through the 2020 HIDO. It was had some stuff in there that would help out, but the basic premise of this ordinance is land spacing and setbacks. That's the basic premise.
It's not
That's the meat.
given permission because it can't.
Right, that's the meat that they did with it.
The best I can tell you, I got me looking at groundwater well studied language, and you want me to look at what these buffers look like if they could be increased.
How much trouble would it be to print on a map that showed parcels that could be used and how they would work or not work with neighboring land?
So you parcels it could be used.
Mhm.
What I am looking at is any parcel that's a certain acreage. Is there something else? You would say any. Would be.
Okay, so let me clarify. When I say parcels, I'm talking about a piece of property here that could sustain an industry. And a piece of property here that could possibly sustain it. And it may only be one in the county. So it may be parcel or how many individual tracts of land could have a class 3. When I said parcels, I was saying how many individual ones, not how many corporate like this down here.
So the minimum lot size is 40 acres. So take 40-acre parcels somewhere in the county. Put your land spacing on it and see what it looks like.
Right.
So you want me to put on what we have now? You want me to put on the 2000?
Well,
Why are you looking at that? What do you mean? Where are you going at with that?
I want to see, one of the things that I've heard in this meeting tonight is if we get this to the point where there's no land available, then we broke the law. Now we're discriminating. So what I'd like to do is see a map of a 40+ acre piece of property and then do the land space. What does that look like? And if possible, I'd like to see it with the 1,200 feet as it's written, and then 1,500 feet. You understand what I'm saying?
But you want to see 2000.
Well, I mean, just throw it out there and just see. I mean, at some point, you gotta have a baseline.
So, yeah,
It's gonna
I
be
can
the law.
represent, we have building footprints, they're taxed. So we have a layer in our GIS system that shows that. So I can pull those in and then let the computer pick 40 acres plus, and then put these land spaces on it and see what it is.
So, right, so it may not hit 2,000, may hit 1,750, 1,550, or whatever.
It'll get on 2000.
So I'll probably break the county apart north to south for you. Let 40 be the breaking point, because we have a very long county, and looking at our map will make it real small. So we can break it apart north to south for those. Put them on big stuff, big paper. All right, I can do that. We can start there.
Outside of that, I don't see.
Is there anything that we can do as far as, I mean, I agree with what Roger was saying about the influx folks that are probably coming here with this Toyota deal and all to the southern part of the county. As far as buffers for developments there? I mean, is there anything that we can do to,
You're talking
Okay.
residential.
that's right.
So, you know, in the zoning ordinance that we were proposing, there was some language in there about buffer and agriculture.
Yeah.
If that's what you're talking about, that can be amended in the subdivision section of the general county ordinances. That comes through as a text amendment, just like y'all, we're pushing through right now, on jump cars and stuff, to make us more effective. That can be done pretty simply. That's a public hearing at commissioners, it hits y'all first. They'll give a recommendation, commissioners here, it's a 69, 60 probably days to get it started. If you want something that's simple. But I know there's been some lot size discussion, I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, lot size discussions can come through the same way, or text amendments, as they go through that public process.
I don't know, I foresee that being a problem with some of the agriculture, so.
That's been discussed, yeah.
We started a conversation a couple meetings back about a subdivision with more than 100 houses. And you cited an example, one is about 20 years old now. That's on a 120 acre parcel, if I remember right, with 106 houses in it. Now you live in Snow Camp, been there all your life. How many more of them do you want to see?
But I mean, you know, I can't tell another man or another person what they gonna do with their land, they,
Well,
to the highest bid.
Did-
You know, I
did-
mean,
this is correct, but one of the things we're talking about here is this lot sizes for residential houses.
I would rather see that up myself, but that's
Okay.
my opinion.
All right, well, that, I don't even need to say no more because you just answered the question. The thought is to have it on a progressive scale. In other words, the bigger the subdivision, the bigger the lots are. And if, for example, if grandpa wants to come over here and cut 3 lots off the backside, well, okay, put 3 lots over and be done with it. But if some wants to come in here from
Somerset.
couple of suitcases full of money, go around and buy farms and then just hire tract builder to come in here and just lick them and stick them.
Right.
Then, okay, well, you can do that, but now the more you do, the bigger your lot's gotta be.
Which means they won't be able to make this builders have as many lots as they.
That's exactly right.
There's no way you can have, you got 200 acres you're trying to build houses on.
You're not gonna have 200 houses.
Have 200 houses.
Yeah.
So it probably wouldn't.
I just think a buffer, like you said, I'm not against, raising the lot size at all. But I think a buffer between agriculture that's already going on,
Existing.
the existing agriculture and the development coming in. I mean, I know that, we can't stop the developments that's coming, but if we had a buffer,
Yep.
that would be, I think that would be good.
And there was some confusion. I've had several people come to the house to talk about this since it got started. And one person read it, that the farmers have got to go around his field and build a berm and plant with vegetative 3 rows alternated, and got to be to screen his cows from the neighbors coming in over here in the next field. I said, no, I know all this verbiage is confusing, but that is not what it says. What it say? I said, when that guy comes in his field and starts building houses, he's got to build a berm and plant trees to buffer you. Oh, is that right? I said, "Mhm."
And they more agreeable to that.
Yeah, he come in the house mad and sat there, and about 30 minutes later, he got up and he was happy.
Yeah.
Might have been because she was in the kitchen baking and shared that some of it with him. I mean, that couldn't have hurt, but
I
So-
just think it would be better, it would make them better neighbors.
Yeah.
In the long run.
So what do we have right now in subdivision ordinance as far as setbacks?
So that's,
I mean,
Stair
as far as,
setbacks.
is there any buffers in the existing?
only thing I
subdivision?
have is if you're on what would be a major road defined by DOT, then you have to put landscaping on front, it's a 40-foot in perpetuity landscape covering that it can never be transferred and blah, blah, blah. It has to be on the lots, existing lots or whatever, you don't separate it. And that's a little bit vague, but I only have that against those major arterials, and actually, we do not define what has to be in there, just something. And I get a lot of engineers asking me, well, what do you want in there? What does it say? It says whatever you want it to be. My suggestion would be, and I made that suggestion of what we put in the solar ordinance, 2 rows alternating 8 to 10 foot apart, blah, blah, blah. And that's new stuff. That's what I'm getting, but because we don't have any language, might be a section that I do want to look up and kind of add that agricultural buffer to that. That's something easy I can mark up for next week. Get you some maps, look at page 62, agricultural buffer, lot size things, y'all have to continue discussion on what you want that.
Yeah, let's talk about that some more before we.
I don't have anything quite to work up, it's an idea and I can make whatever y'all need done, you just gotta look at that, yes.
So as we're discussing this class 3, we kind of jumped over into residential there a little bit.
Well, they abutted residential.
Right, right. Yeah,
And there's not, y'all are tasked with, what the thing said was, let's talk about HIDO. Y'all are also talking about things that are affecting the HIDO, so. Y'all can bring back to the group what y'all want to recommend. They don't have to like it, they don't have to recommend it. But y'all are thinking through all the pieces, so we present what y'all want to present.
So what I'm getting at is what we've talked about tonight was we addressed what the motion was and what we weren't supposed to do. We were supposed to concentrate, but yet there still seems to be a need in my mind and a desire to have some of those original talking points at least addressed. But we're not gonna be able to address them for just a snow camp area. We would have to address for the whole county. And it would cross over multiple articles in this UDO.
That's why we made the UDO, so that we could come together in one group and have all what's in the county in one ordinance.
Are we interested in doing it?
And
Everybody's heartburn beginning to ease up some.
you're still in technical review. For I've got a marching orders unless y'all have something else for me. We will be playing board next Thursday. Here's a music announcement. Has anybody heard as much as we have been hearing? Because I can have it down there if I think I'm gonna have a crowd, but
I ain't heard nobody.
I personally haven't, so I don't know that we need.
I was glad to hold the hinges on the doors shut. People that stand in there, talk to me about that.
But you
But
haven't.
I had you since last week. You know, I
I'm
had
the
you
board
since
scheduled
last
to be
week.
in here then, because we can hold, what,
I thought you were gonna.
37
Put it on
after
boat, go to SWAT.
I can hold 50 people in this room, so 37 after the board is seated. I think that's.
Oh, your governor said today we everybody can get back together and quit wearing masks.
I'm glad, because we already decided. Our people don't tend to do that. Even when I put them out. So.
He said the state had taught us enough for how we can protect ourselves.